Got it. Choose this one over here. I'm going to turn on AI Companion. Start. Welcome back to another episode here on Hacks and Hobbies, and today we get to play. Oh, keep going the wrong way. Mirror, it's not mirrored. Come on, Nick Hutchison. Oh, he's got another minute. I came on early.
Hello, hello.
Hey, how you doing, Nick? Good to see you, man.
Yeah, good to see you as well.
Awesome. Ready to rock and roll.
Sounds like a plan. Yeah, appreciate it. Nice to
Of
see you
course, man.
again. How was your
Yeah,
week so far?
the week's been good. The week's been really good. Um, Taught the class yesterday, trying to get them to start to brainstorm. I don't know if I mentioned, but I teach a high school class on how to launch their own businesses.
So cool. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's been good. What else? We played. We were building an Iron Man suit. So we've got the leg part
Oh, that's cool.
kind of done. I have like different pieces like coming in, coming through the mail like monthly. So they'll send like 4 packages of these things. So I only build it when my son's around. I'm like, okay, are you ready? Should we work on the next parts? And then so that's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's cool. I love it.
Sweet. Thanks,
I
man.
wish I had you teaching me in high school.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, man. That's really kind of you. It's really kind of you.
I mean, entrepreneurship was just, I mean, it wasn't even a subject that was being discussed. So
Right. That is so true. That is so true. I learned it very from reading books myself, and it looks like you took that same route, reading tons of books and getting it out there.
yeah, I
Very
did.
nice.
That's for sure.
I love it. All right, let's get it started. I'm gonna Welcome back to another episode here on Hacks and Hobbies. And today I get to speak with Nick Hutchison. Nick, thanks so much for coming on to the podcast.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. I'm an open book, pun intended. So excited to see what you want to chat about today.
Absolutely. Let's take a walk down memory lane, and what we're going to do is learn a little bit about you and how you got started, and then go into deep into what you're doing with book thinkers. I mean, that's a really powerful thing that you're doing for your clients and for the people that come to you to publish their books and market them and whatnot. I think that'll be really helpful for those looking to publish their books, and how easy it's that process, right? It's not that hard. It's you just got to be very focused. You just got to be very intentional on how you create that process. So let's get right into it, man.
Well,
Talk to
growing
me.
up, I was, oh, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, talk to me on what inspired you to take this route and what got you started.
Well, when I was growing up, I was not much of a reader, which
Mm.
surprises a lot of people, especially if they're watching the video version of this and they could see, I have about 1,000 books behind me.
Yeah.
But I was more of the athlete stereotype, not much of the academic. And so that continued through my college experience until I went into my senior year. I took an internship at a local software company. And very early into that experience, one of my mentors, Kyle, he said something along the
Mm.
lines of, listen, Nick, listening to the same song for the 1,000th time in a row on your commute here, it's not going to get you closer to where you want to be in life. But the right business podcast might. And so I
Mm-hmm.
started listening to podcasts, and I had about an hour commute each way. So I was crushing these podcasts and learning as
Yeah.
much as I could. And there was a moment where I realized that so many of these people being interviewed on shows just like this, they were
Mm-hmm.
giving at least some credit for their success to the early books that they had read about
Yeah.
entrepreneurship, business, personal development. And so I think I just had this moment one day where I realized if I was deliberately choosing not to read these books, and I was deliberately choosing to ignore the advice given by the people I wanted to be like,
Mm-hmm.
and deliberately choosing to live under my potential. And so I went to my local Barnes and Noble. I picked up about 10 books, and the rest is history.
Dude, that's such an awesome journey. It's always that one uh important person in our lives that that saw the potential, that took the chance, like I'm gonna bring this person in and start letting train him the ropes and whatnot, and then they give you that one single advice and you just take it to the heart, like I'm gonna just run with it. It's just like when Gary Vaynerchuk told me, hey, just start documenting your journey, and he's been talking about this in several videos and whatnot, right? So it's right there, you got the shirt. When
Yep.
you document your journey, you're gonna figure out where you're meant to be and where you're meant to go.
Yes, I agree 1000%. And that's some wonderful advice from Gary. I've implemented a lot of his advice over the years, which we could talk about through today's interview.
Mm-hmm.
But you're totally right. Kyle told me, hey, check out these podcasts. And here I am almost 10 years later, having read 500 books as a result of that experience.
Yeah.
I built a business that serves hundreds of authors a year. I have 10 people on my team. They're all book nerds, just like me. And none of that would have happened, I don't think, unless he had
Mm-hmm.
given me that advice. And so, yeah, it's important to share, your thoughts with other people. I think that's one of the
Mm-hmm.
main lessons there, is that you never know when a piece of advice or a recommendation can change somebody's life. And I've seen this happen over the years 1,000 times. The right book
Mm-hmm.
at the right time or the right podcast at the right time can change somebody's life. I know
Yeah.
it for a fact because it's
Yeah.
happened to me.
Yeah. No, that's so powerful. And it's not like he's not giving that advice to other people. I'm sure he's giving that advice like, hey, read books, it's gonna make you. It's also dependent on who's taking the advice and who's actually implementing it. So you had that growth mindset from the get-go. You might not be listening to the same song for the 1 hour, right? But you had that growth mindset and you just needed that little bit of spark to get that fire going.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And these books, they just hold so much potential for all of us. I think it's my full-time job now to convince people that personal development is as legitimate as it gets. And that when
Mm-hmm.
you follow somebody like you or Gary V and you implement the recommendations that you hear on their podcasts or
Yeah.
social media, magic things happen, man. They
Yeah,
really
it's
do.
it's it's so powerful. So Let's talk about book thinkers and how book thinkers is helping entrepreneurs, authors, and launching their books and making that a reality. Because a lot of people think, oh my God, I need to have a bestseller book when I get out the gate. But that's probably not going to happen the first time around. Talk to us about a little bit about that.
Right. So the origin story, right? I start reading these books, I start sharing them with friends and family. I have a full-time sales position, but I just start reviewing books online, right? That's
Mm,
my side hustle. It's something that I'm already reading these books. I want to connect with like-minded people. So I just start sharing about those books on mostly Instagram and Facebook. And as I'm sharing these books, I'm meeting a lot of people. The community is starting to grow and people are reading the books that I'm recommending. They're providing
yeah.
me feedback. It's a super cool cycle. And eventually, a couple of years into that journey, authors started to reach out to me and they'd say,
Mm,
"Hey, Nick, my target reader for this brand new book looks a heck of a lot like your audience. I think they'd enjoy it. Can I pay you
yeah.
for a book review?" And so I'm like, yeah, of course you can, because I'm reading for free. Now I'm getting paid to read. And what you learn in some of these business books, especially when you're a freelancer or a small business owner, is that you should
Mhm,
always follow up with your customers and ask, is there anything else that I can help with? And that does
yeah.
two things. Number one, it helps you understand what kind of pains your customer is going through. And then number two, it gives you opportunities to fill those gaps. And so
Mm,
I've tried out all sorts of things to promote and market books. And we've found a few things over the years that have worked really well. So today, Book Thinker serves hundreds of authors a year in some type of paid
mm,
capacity. Most of our revenue comes from three services. Number one, we do short form video content. So we'll actually fly out to an author with the cameras and the lighting. We'll
nice.
prep a bunch of content ideas and we'll help them turn a physical book into 50 to 100 pieces of short form content for social media. That's good for Instagram, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, and pretty much
Yeah.
everything nowadays.
Yeah.
Number two, we'll do podcast booking. So we'll place authors on up to 100 podcasts actually to
Holy
talk about their
smokes.
book in anticipation of launch. Yeah, it's a lot. And then number three, book reviews. So our community on Instagram has about 150,000 engaged followers. These are people who are already reading these books. And so we
Mm,
review books, present them to the audience, and we could sell a bunch of copies. And so that's the primary function of my business. It's actually not on the publishing side, but it's on the
sure.
promotion
The
side.
promotion
And
side, yeah.
yeah, we work with all types of people. As long as the book is mission driven, right? People are writing this book so that it can help their audience, then that
Yeah.
means they're a good fit for us.
I like that a lot. And you're so right. It's the promotion, it's the marketing that takes anything from zero to a much higher number because more people are gonna see what's happening. More people are gonna get eyes on this thing. And sure, it's easy to publish. And some people might be coming like, well, it's really hard to publish. Well, not really. KDP.com, kdp.amazon.com will get you all the tools to publish your book. But once you've published it, how do more people get to see it? And if we see the cycle of other media elements being promoted, for example, you're probably going to know of the next movie coming out up 3-4 months in advance before the movie comes out because they got to market so more people know about the movie coming out, and then you can go see it. And then on top of that, that's just one layer of marketing. Every single actor is going to show up on shows and talk about the movie or just show up. And hey, when you're in the people's eyes, guess what? People are gonna want to find out, hey, what are you working on? Oh, you're working on this new movie. Oh, let me go check it out. And the 100 podcast booking is really powerful because I think when Green Lights came out by Matthew McConaughey, he had showed up on 500 episodes as a guest just to talk about the books. And I actually sent him a message like, "Hey Matt, you could do a little better with the studio." What I didn't know after reading the book is that he's been on a like he basically lives off of he's always moving in different locations, and it doesn't really matter to him how he looks on video because guess what, he's already made it. He wants to come out as authentic, and that book was totally a perfect read.
Yes, it was. I agree. And you're right. I think that's one thing that allows my business to flourish is that unfortunately a lot of these authors, they put out their book,
Mm,
nobody reads it because they didn't do any work in anticipation of the launch. You know, KDP is an amazing platform and it gives a
mhm.
lot of people the ability to upload a book with ease, get it out there with print on demand services. But that means that people aren't putting in the traditional 12 months of pre-launch activity that they
Yeah.
used to do in anticipation of this launch. And
Mm,
so one of the recommendations that I make for people outside of just our services is something that you mentioned, the Gary V thing of document, don't create. So just document your experience. Share
mm.
with everybody the process of writing this book, how difficult it is, what your expectations are. Each step of that process, the manuscript is submitted, you know, like, oh, I'm unboxing my first copy of the book. Get
Yeah.
people involved in that process so that they know when your book comes out, you can have a little bit more early traction. And if you can have 100 or 500 podcasts go live during your launch week, you know, if you can create a bunch of good social content and
Mhm.
a few posts go viral, if you can have some book influencers share your work, all of that's going to help as well. And you're right,
Yeah.
it's totally about the branding. It's not the best written books, but it's the best selling books. And you have to sell, you have to market.
That's right. So it does, I mean, it does matter how good the writing is in the book too, right?
It does,
Because
yes.
once, because that's going to validate what the marketing is showing. Like, oh my God, I'm going to learn this, this, and this. And then the book delivers. I'm like, guess what? I'm going to recommend it to other people. One thing that Seth Godin, uh, that I always go back to, what Seth Godin says, people ask about, hey, I want a best-selling, best-selling book. Well, then he asks them, well, where's your bad writing? If that's your best writing, where's your bad writing? So you got to be doing the work. And like you said, like Gary Vee said, you got to be documenting. And as you're documenting, guess what you're doing? You are writing, you're writing content, you are putting in the work, you're getting better at creating the content that's going to change lives when people do read it.
Yeah, 1000%. And if the book is connected to a mission, which a lot of times it is, you know, and you're connected to that purpose, you'll persevere and you'll do more marketing and it will make more sense and you'll light up on
Mm,
interviews when people ask you about it. And you know, here I am, we're recording this interview in late September. My very first book launches on November 1st. And I'm
nice.
putting in that work. You know, I'm on shows, I'm talking about the book, I'm sharing it on social media, we're launching giveaways and doing everything. And it's given me a lot more respect for all of our clients as well, because
Yeah.
putting out a book is, you know, it's easy, but it's also really tough if you want it to
Yeah.
do well. I think there's a difference between just getting a book out there and actually having a successful launch.
No, that's so powerful. And that gets me to reflect on. So I launched the book back in January. It took us 2 weeks to, put everything together and publish the book. Well, we published the book, but that's what we did. I managed to do some social media, some book signing events, but didn't get to the number where I think I could have gotten to. But then
Mhm.
what you're telling me is that you need to put at least 12 months worth of work of marketing your product before it even comes out. And that actually translates really well because when Pat Flynn launched the Switch Pod, you've probably seen the Switch Pod. If you haven't, it's a really ingenious device for people who are vlogging. People vlogging would use a Gorilla Pod, and then it would have these movable arms. But anytime they want to put the camera down, they would have to, spend another 32 minutes to get those arms right to put it down. So they created this product, Switch Pod, and he had talked about it for at least a year before the product launched on Kickstarter. And within the first 11 hours, they met their goal of $150,000 or 110,000, something like that.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, it's that pre-launch period is really important, and so is the post-launch period. I think
Mm-hmm.
in my world, a lot of authors think that their launch is the end of their marketing. But I think if the book is a good lead mechanism for some type of complementary product or service like
Yeah.
coaching, consulting, speaking, or another business, then that book becomes a marketing tool, a business card for you for years to come. And so you don't want to just stop marketing the minute your book comes out. You want to continue to market it for years to come. So last night at my house, actually, I had this really cool entrepreneur and soon to be first time author, Noah Kagan. Noah's a
Nice.
really cool dude. And we were on the phone last week and he's like, dude, I'm going to be in Boston next week. I said, why don't you come by? We'll record a podcast for your book. And I was asking him, like, how intentional are you with this book launch? Because he has a book coming out in January. And he's like, oh, I'm very intentional. He's consulting all of his friends, which are like the coolest people,
Yeah.
James Clear and all of these
Nice.
authors that have sold bazillions of books. And he's getting all this behind the scenes advice. And
Yeah.
all of the advice, the kind of through line with all of it is you need to do a tremendous amount of activity. You need to measure that activity, see what's having the biggest impact, because that's going to be unique for everybody. It could be podcasting, could be short form content, could be book influencers or anything. And get out there and then triple down on that. And that's how you sell books. And you have to continue doing whatever works for years to come.
Man, I love that so much. Thank you. Thank you for that insight into some really actionable advice, because you've got to put in the work. I mean, it's almost like when you sow a seed, you continue to put, you continue to nourish, fertilize, nourishment, sunlight, like all of that stuff, water. And then after maybe a few weeks or maybe a month, you'll get the fruits. Like, for example, tomatoes, it's probably a month's time before you see the fruit. But for trees like mango trees or apple trees and pear trees, they take at least 10 years for them to start bearing fruit. So it goes into what's that word? It validates the point that you've got to put in a lot of work beforehand and then continue to do that work after the fact that it's launched. So what you're saying is that I've got hope to be able to market my book, even though it's launched, it was published back in January. I can still continue to promote it and bring people back to it.
Yes, absolutely. Noah said something last night. I've never heard anybody at least phrase it like this, but he said, what's the difference between a successful entrepreneur and an unsuccessful entrepreneur? And I'm like, I have a bunch of answers, but what do you think? And he said, it's consistency. It's doing the boring work every single day for a very long period of time. And I'm like, I mean, yes, but shouldn't you also be looking for new and brighter opportunities? And he said, well, think about a relationship, because I just got married back in May. He said, think about your relationship. Are you looking for new, better, and brighter things? Or are you trying to go deeper into that relationship and improve it? And I'm like, well, that's a good point. So like, once you find something in book marketing that works, stop looking for the new, flashy, fun stuff. It's not about novelty. It's about doing the things that work and that work, and deepening your relationship with that activity and then consistently doing it over a long period of time. And I was like, that's a good point. Because far too often entrepreneurs or authors, very similar process of launching a book and launching a business, you're always looking for something new, but that's not the right way to approach it.
No, you're so right. It's almost like, hey, I've tried a half of this croissant, but now I'm gonna go try half of a bagel. Then I'm gonna have half of a donut. No, man, just focus on and finish one thing before you go to the next strategy.
Yes. Yep.
All right, so let's take a quick break, and then when we get back, you'll share 3 hacks to share with the audience that they can implement with their book journey. Hey guys, welcome back. We've been talking with Nick Hutchison from Book Thinkers, and such an awesome conversation here, all about how to maximize the sale of your books. I've just shrunk that entire talk down to, hey, how to maximize the sale of your book, because it's all about the promotion, it's all about the marketing, it's all about the work, the boring work that you put in to make that happen. But Nick has not just 3, but he has 6 hacks for us. 3 in the space of what to do with books that you're already reading and how to get more value out of it. And then 3 hacks on what you can do to become a better promoter, or Nick will decide how that goes. Nick, take it away.
Yeah. Which one do you want me to start with?
Let's start with getting the value, most of value out of the books they're already reading.
Yeah, so this is a passion of mine because as I built my community of about 150,000 readers, hundreds of people, maybe even 1,000 people have reached
Mm-hmm.
out over the years saying, Nick, I appreciate all of the book recommendations, but how the heck do we translate the information we're reading into
Mm-hmm.
actual behavior change, actions? How do we implement these books? And so I'd always answer people, right? I'd send them a voice note, an email,
Mm-hmm.
jump on a quick Zoom call, but I knew there was something missing. I knew I had more to offer.
Yeah.
And I had never taken the time to observe my own behavior to see what I was doing, reading these books and implementing them. And so, again, that's why I've decided to write this book, Rise of the Reader: Strategies for Mastering Your Reading Habits and Applying What You Learn. And so, I've detailed in that book dozens of strategies, but I'll give everybody a taste today. I'll share 3 of my favorite hacks. So, number 1, I think everybody needs to read with more intention. Sometimes I'll meet readers and I'll say, "Hey, what are you reading?" And they'll tell me. And then I'll say, "Why?" And they'll be like, "What do you mean, why?" Well, why are you reading the books that you're reading? So, a good intention or a good goal for the book is written on the inside cover so that you can review it each time you read a few more pages.
That is
And
so
it will
good.
follow the SMART goal framework. So it will be specific, measurable, attainable. It'll be relevant to your life or your business, and it will be time bound. And so if I
Mm.
read a book on communication, I don't just read it and hope that it's going to change my life. I'll set a goal, something like find and implement at least 2 strategies for improving my communication by the end of the month.
Nice.
And so that's specific, it's measurable too. It's attainable. It's not like make $1 million by the end of the month,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like find and implement 2 things.
Yeah.
It's relevant to my business and my life because effective communication makes me a better podcast guest or host or business owner or salesperson. And then I give myself a time limit by the end of the month. Now I'm far more likely to take action on the book
Yes.
because I have a realistic goal. So that's hack number 1. Do you like that one?
Oh, I love that so much because now you're gearing up your mind to do the work to get to that attainable goal, right? Because if you say, "Oh, I want to be a millionaire," but you don't set a date and time, you're not able to achieve it. Just like was it Jim Carrey who wrote himself $1 million check? Or was
Mhm.
it a 10 million? I can't even remember what the number was, but it was a really audacious number. And I think within 5 years, he was able to achieve it because he's like, I got to cash that check on this date. And so having those attainable goal and shorter ones are so much more easier to achieve.
Yeah, absolutely. You're priming your brain to find those things within the book. You're filtering for it with the reticular activating system.
Mm,
And so, yeah, I love that one. So I'll share another one. Sometimes I meet people and they're like, "Oh, I don't have time to read." And so I love to give them the following math example about scheduling 15 minutes in the morning and 15 minutes in the evening.
yeah.
So instead of trying to find time, replace a low impact activity like scrolling on Instagram or watching Netflix with reading a good book.
Mm,
So maybe insert 15 minutes in your morning and 15 minutes in your evening. Not the whole thing,
right.
right? Just 15 minutes of each. And so in 15 minutes, a beginning reader can read about 10 pages. If they
Mm,
can read 10 pages in the morning and 10 in the evening, 5 days a week, that's 100 pages a week.
yeah.
Most of these books are 200 pages or less now. And
Yeah.
so that's a good book every 2 weeks. You can read 26 books a year simply by replacing 15 minutes of your Instagram in the morning and just the first 15 minutes of your
Yeah.
Netflix or HBO or
Yeah.
football in the evening. And you could read 26 books, improve 26 areas of your life. And I think that's a really interesting reading hack because a lot of people
That is.
think, "Oh, I can't read books. I have no time for that." Yes, you do. Pull
Yes,
out
you
your
do.
phone, check your screen time. Yes, you do.
And that's such a cool feature that they added. Like, oh, now we can tell which app you spent the most time on, and now you can replace that time. Like, wait, well, I don't need to play Candy Crush anymore, or I can play 15 minutes less of this game, and spend on and reading books. And I think another great way to listen to books and is listening to them, just like what you did, right? You're commuting, and a lot of people are going back to commuting now. Like there's at least spending anywhere from 20 minutes to 30 minutes in their car going back and forth from work. So that could be another time that they can start listening to a new book.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'll share one more, which is building an accountability group with your most motivated friends so that you can read the books together.
Mm,
If that Jim Rohn quote is true, we are the average of the 5 people that we spend the most time with. You might
yes.
as well help your group improve while you're improving as well. And so I love to read books with my friends, and I love to
Mm,
meet on a weekly basis for a few minutes and chat about the books that we're reading.
yeah.
Tell everybody what my goal for the book is. Is it meeting that goal? What actions am I looking to take from the book? And hold my friends accountable to doing exactly the same thing.
Mm,
And sometimes people tell me, Nick, like, I don't have motivated friends. I don't have people that want to read these books. Well, hold your friends accountable to something else. Do you have a friend that said they wanted to run a marathon last year and they never did
mm,
it? Maybe you could hold them accountable to getting back on that train, or maybe gift them a copy of a book and say, hey, I
yeah.
know this book can change your life. Can we just chat about it once a week? Maybe review a chapter together and watch that momentum start to build.
Mm,
Reading books does not have to be a solo sport. You can do it with
right.
other people.
No, you're so right. And reading also increases your comprehension of things that are happening around us, right? Because you're actively engaging your brain to make sense of what you're reading on paper. I love it.
Yes. Yep. And now we can move on to some of the hacks for authors. So one of my favorite
Absolutely.
ones, I heard somebody tell me a couple of years ago. They said, so many authors quote Marcus Aurelius, the famous Stoic philosopher, right? But Marcus Aurelius can't quote your book.
Uh-uh.
Ryan Holiday can. So why quote Marcus Aurelius, somebody who's been dead for 1,500 years, maybe even more than that now,
Yeah, yeah.
when you could quote somebody that's alive today, and that improves the chances that that person's going to share your content if you send them a copy or promote it on social media. So I think stop quoting people that aren't alive anymore and start quoting people that are, so that they're more likely to share your book. I think that's a fun little hack for writing.
Dude, that's a really, really awesome hack. I mean, why not mention the people that are changing your lives that are alive so that they can promote into their communities? I mean, why we're doing these podcast guesting so that you can meet my community and then I can meet your community because you're going to share this episode. Hey, I had a conversation on hacks and hobbies. I shared 6 hacks. Uh, and it's about expanding those networks. So absolutely use the people that are in your network to talk about your book.
Yes, absolutely. And just, hack number two, borrow credibility. I think
Mm,
just like you mentioned, if we're having this conversation and you share it with your audience, now I'm borrowing your credibility and we're
yeah,
having a conversation together in front of your audience. And so
exactly.
you could do that by hosting a podcast. You could do that by quoting people in your book and having them share it. You could do Instagram lives. There are all sorts of ways to get in front of other people's audiences,
Hmm.
borrowing their credibility, because trust is transitive. Like if you trust me
Yeah,
and your audience trusts you, they're also likely to trust me because of the transitive property. And so it's like, yeah, get in front of the audiences that are interested in your book by being featured on podcasts or social media channels. I think that's a really interesting, way to get in front of a bigger audience too, because not everybody has their own audience. So you got to use
that's
other
so true.
people sometimes.
That's so true. And recently I watched this video where this unknown person who had made it pretty big on TikTok was able to get Drake to be a guest on her podcast. Now she only interviews celebrities, and one of the things that she did was she's like, "Hey, I'll pay up to $300 to anybody who can introduce me to a celebrity so they can come and be a guest on her podcast." But she had done the work to, follow that trust through referrals and whatnot. So transitive properties of borrowing audiences. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen that interview. That's a good one. And yeah, she came out of nowhere. So the last one that I'll share is, I think authors should make their books more actionable, because word of mouth momentum for a book happens when people start to take action.
Hmm.
So I was on a podcast the other day and the host was telling me how Atomic Habits helped him lose 60 pounds. And then later in the conversation, he asked me, hey, what helps a book go viral through word of mouth? And I said, you just answered it. People ask you all the time, I bet, hey, how'd you lose 60 pounds? And you go, Atomic Habits helped me do it. That's how a book goes viral. That's why that book has sold 10 million copies. So if you can make your book as actionable as possible and you can give your audience the language to share it,
Yeah.
if you can be intentional about that up front, suggest little exercises and things for people to go out and do in public so that you can increase the chances that they tell everybody about your book.
Yeah.
I think that's another little hack that, you know, not just philosophy, but like help your people, your readers take action.
Dude, that's so good, Nick. Thank you so much. I appreciate that a lot because a lot of the times we're just inside our own brains, right? We're just thinking, not taking action, but then taking that action and being intentional is super, super important. And the more I think about it, the more deeper keep going into it, because some things that are happening around us too, it makes you reflect onto how long are we going to live this life, right? We're when you're writing books, when you're creating these content, when you're essentially extending how long people remember you when you pass away, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it's kind of crazy. I mean, I'm doing an episode on that topic, on being intentional and being very, what's that word? Being very intentional in how you do and how you treat yourself. Actually, I was just thinking earlier today, what if you lived your life as if you were on a podcast episode all your life? You'd
Yeah.
probably live a very
Yeah.
different life.
Yeah, you'd be a bolder version of yourself. I like to think about that. I actually wrote that example in my book. I said,
Nice.
what if you were I said, what if you were on a TV show though? And if you lived a boring life, people are going to turn off the channel and you'll have less energy. But if you live an energetic life,
Mm,
then more people would want to tune in and stay on the channel, which would give you more energy. So it's
yeah.
like, yeah, how do you be the boldest version of your life? Pretend that like Gary V's camera crew is following you around all the time.
Man, I love that so much. Sweet, man. This was such a fun conversation. I didn't I didn't know where we're gonna go. I mean, I had an idea where we're gonna go, but what I what I learned is it's absolutely actionable. I can take action and start marketing my book again, because hey, the more energy I put into it, the more energy it's going to provide to other people as well.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I appreciate the conversation too.
Dude, Nick, let's jump into the next portion of the episode. These are the rapid fire questions that I love to ask my guests. Number one, what is the one hobby that you wish you got into?
I wish I got into reading sooner. So I didn't start reading until I was 21 years old. I really didn't. I never read a book. And so the hobby that I wish I got into sooner was reading personal development books. And if that's too much of a cheat answer, I'm happy to give another one. But that, you know, that's the first thing that comes to mind.
No, it's a really good answer, and I think you were being very specific in not just reading any books, because you have to read books to get through school and college and whatnot, but reading personal development books. I think that's the key phrase right there, because my sons, both of them are excellent readers. They read through all the Dragon series, all the Harry Potter series, like all of these Dogman. Like there's so many books that they've read and that are in their bookshelves, but they're not personal development. I'm sure there's some kind of personal development laced throughout all of the books, but it's not highlighted because they're at a certain age. But then I'm sure that it's going to translate one way or another to get into personal development. And I think that's a very uh, great hobby for anybody to get into. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Next up, what did you want to be when you were a child?
I wanted to be an athlete. I love the NFL. I watch a lot of football. I've always had that dream. I think a lot of children do, you know, whether it's basketball or baseball or
Yeah.
football or soccer, whatever the sport is. And for me, it was football.
No, that's really cool. Football is a very powerful sport. In fact, our neighbor just came up to me the other day and she said, "Hey, have you been watching the Commanders? They just won against Broncos." I'm like, "Oh, that's pretty cool." I don't watch any sports, so I had no idea what she was talking about. But she was really thrilled and excited because apparently there's a story around Commanders, or um, previously known as the Redskins.
Mhm. Yeah, and you're wearing their colors right now, so
I guess I am. I had no clue that those were their colors. All right, man. Next up, what is your favorite movie or TV show?
Hmm. My favorite movie is Gladiator.
Hmm. You did mention Marcus Aurelius, and he is in The Gladiator.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, that's a great example of Joseph Campbell's kind of like story arc. And
Mm-hmm.
you start in a great position, then you lose everything, then you build it back through a bunch of hard work and discipline, and at the very end, you're presented with a reward. And
Yeah.
it's such an epic story. I heard they're remaking it. I hope that's true, because it's always fun to see adaptations.
It is very true to see adaptations, although Russell Crowe did such an amazing job in being the Marcus Aurelius that he was in that movie. I don't know how I mean, I'm always skeptical of adaptations, but sometimes they really impress you, and other times they're like, the original is much better.
Yeah, yeah. And then as far as TV shows, my wife and I just finished watching Game of Thrones the other day, and
Mm,
I mean that's a wonderful series. So that's somewhere towards the top of my list. I also really love Succession, the
okay.
HBO show about business and family and yeah,
Yeah.
controversy. It's a really good one, Succession.
I love it. Thank you so much. All right, next up, what movie would you choose if you, Nick, got to play a character in it?
Hmm. That's a good question. I read a book a couple of years ago called When I Woke Up about this guy,
Mm,
Paul Evans, who was in a coma, came out of this coma, and it completely changed his entire understanding of the world. And, we were on a couple of calls back in the day, and he said, "Look, I'm trying to get this into a movie." And he's like, "You can play me in the movie." So,
I
because
love it.
we look a little similar. He's got a bunch of tattoos. I have
Sure.
tattoos. So I was like, listen, if you ever get a movie deal, let me try out for that movie When I Woke Up. Because he lives such a cool life and everything. So, and then, I also love the movie Point Break.
Mm-hmm.
There's two versions of it. There's an older one with Keanu Reeves, and then there's a little bit of a newer one. And it's kind of like this action adventure thriller type movie.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that if I could choose a movie that already exists, it'd probably be Point Break.
Oh, I love that. That's an amazing movie, and Keanu just does excellent in whatever movie that he picks up.
That is true. Yeah.
He's such a good and humble actor. Absolutely
Yes, he
amazing.
is.
Next up, and two more questions. Next up is, who is your favorite superhero?
You know what's funny? I mean, we talked about Marvel and we talked a little bit about what you're building, but I was never into the superhero stuff.
Mm,
And I have two brothers that are obsessed with Marvel and every other superhero universe and comics
sure.
and everything like that.
Uh-huh.
Obsessed, like going on opening nights and everything. But for whatever reason, I never really got into it. And so when
Mm,
I do think about my favorite superhero, when I was younger, it's probably Superman. I love the idea of strength, the
right.
ability to fly, laser vision or whatever. Like I think it's the coolest thing ever. So I think probably Superman. What about
I
you?
love. Mine is Iron Man because he's just a regular person, but he uses his brain to come up with all this tech and come up with all of these things and to better the world, right? So, and then he's got his own story arc throughout the entire Marvel's cinematic universe, and how he goes from being this person who didn't care about anything else, lots of money, all this thing, to completely changing and giving up his entire life to save the entire universe. So it's a
Yeah.
pretty cool story arc within like all of the movies, and how you see his growth throughout. So I see that a lot, and that's why the red. I mean, it's the red from the Iron Man.
Somebody needs to create a superhero that can read super fast and implement all of these books or something.
Well, if you think about it, the Flash can read really fast because he's literally, slows down time, and he can, do those tasks. And if you think about it, Neo can also read really fast and learn really fast through the plug. The plug. I know kung fu now.
Yeah, well,
From the
those are two
Matrix.
good points. Yeah.
Yeah,
So maybe next time I'm asked that question, I'll say the Flash or Neo.
there you go. Okay. Last question. If you were a board game, what would it be?
Catan, Settlers of Catan. That's my
Oh
favorite
man,
board game.
that is such a fun game. I wish I could just leave the table, the board set, because it takes a long time just to set the board. In fact, I think I saw somewhere that these folks, uh, built out the entire Catan board out of wood. So even the tiles were made of wood, and they were like engraved
I
with the
have
right
one.
stuff.
Yeah.
You have one of those? Oh,
Yes, I do. I was given
so
it
good.
for my birthday, and it's even customized. Like some of the engravings have my name and some
Oh,
other stuff.
nice.
Yeah. So my family started playing that game years and years and years before it became super popular in the United
Hmm.
States.
Yeah,
And so by the time that it started to become popular, I had years and years of practice and strategy under my belt. And every time, so I'm one of four boys. Every
hmm,
time our family gets together for
yeah,
Thanksgiving or Christmas, we always show up early and play some Catan because,
yeah,
again, it's a 4-player game in the
yeah.
standard version. And so the four of us will play a couple of games before the festivities start.
Dude, that's so much fun. And I've had I've had the I've had the Catan boards for at least 10 years now. So I bought it like way back in the days, and we were in Colorado, and I would bring the whole game to work. I'm like, hey, let's play this game. And we would, have a couple of sessions, but never really got around to like playing it with my kids, because my kids are all of different age. They're anywhere from 13, 8, 5, and 1 year old. So we can't really have anything set up
Not yet.
anywhere.
Yeah.
Not yet, but pretty soon we're going to be there. So thank you so much for reigniting the passion for Catan. All right, my man, where can my superpreneurs find you?
Listen, one of my favorite things to do is provide custom book recommendations. So I love playing this like book matchmaker role. And so if anybody in your audience is dealing with a specific problem or they'd like to develop a specific skill set and they're not sure what a good book could be, DM me at Book Thinkers on Instagram. That's
Mhm.
our largest and most vibrant community. That's where you'll find people interacting, talking about the books they love. It's just such a cool place to be. And so at Book Thinkers on Instagram, and from there you can find links to pre-order my book, Rise of the Reader. You can find links for everything else in my universe.
Nice. I love it, man. I've got the pre-order in for your book as well. I can't wait till it arrives on November 1st. It's going to be awesome. And dude, so much power to you. Thank you so much for your time, your energy, your wisdom. I really appreciate this episode with you.
Yeah, I appreciate you too. Thank you.
All right, man. Till next time, we'll catch you in the next episode.